My name is Elia Cohen. The story I'm about to tell might be difficult for some to process. I want to emphasize that this isn't about choosing sides. Rather, it's a truthful reflection of what I've been through. I was a soldier in the Israeli Defense Forces. My life was defined by my roles and duties. Discipline was everything to me. Each morning, as I donned my uniform, I felt more than just a soldier. I felt like a guardian of my people. As a Jew, my faith was a fundamental support that kept me steady. While fulfilling my duties, I sensed God's presence with me. In times when I feared I might not survive, I took comfort in believing my mission was holy. However, life doesn't always align with our convictions. Everything I believed was challenged on September 24th, 2024. The day began routinely. Clear orders, no room for questions. My commander ordered me to fire upon a group suspected of aiding our foes, including women among them. It wasn't my place to question. In the military, you follow orders without pause. I positioned my rifle, finger on the trigger, my breathing controlled, poised for the command. My heart unexpectedly pounded, though I attributed it to a surge of adrenaline. Just as I was about to pull the trigger, a bullet struck my shoulder, knocking me to the ground. At first, confusion clouded my mind. Pain surged through me, and I struggled not just to survive, but to remain conscious. Yet, I succumbed. My eyes grew heavy, the world dimmed to black, and silence enveloped me. Then, an unusual sensation overcame me. I felt as though I was drifting away from my body, hovering above the battlefield. The sounds of screams and gunfire were there but distant, like echoes fading into oblivion. Amidst this turmoil, I sensed my soul being pulled into a tunnel. This tunnel was dark, yet not menacing, quiet and tranquil. I felt a presence waiting at its end. With each step forward, I grew more detached from my physical self and my former life. The warfare and agony dissolved. It seemed I had escaped all the chaos. But I was mistaken. This was merely the start. When I stepped out of the tunnel, I entered an entirely different realm. At first glance, it appeared to be a peaceful sanctuary. As I opened my eyes, the scene before me was almost ethereal. A magnificent city bathed in golden light, with smooth roads and elegant buildings that captivated the eye. People around me smiled and conversed with joy. I thought, this must be heaven. Believing I had passed, I assumed this was my eternal reward. As I ventured deeper into the city, its charm deepened. The air was crisp and fragrant, reminiscent of joyful moments from my childhood. Birds sang melodies that soothed my soul, and a comforting warmth enveloped my heart, banishing any remnants of fear. It seemed I had found peace. Yet this realm, which I initially believed to be paradise, subtly began to transform. The changes were barely noticeable at first. A peculiar chill pervaded the air. The delightful fragrances waned, overtaken by a faint odor of decay. The cheerful chirping of birds halted, replaced by unsettling whispers and murmurs. The smiles on people's faces disappeared, supplanted by expressions of detachment and coldness. The radiant glow that once illuminated the buildings slowly faded, and the elegant stone facades began to show cracks. Compelled to keep moving, there was no apparent way to retreat. The city morphed into a labyrinth, its streets narrowing into corridors that led nowhere. As I continued, my clothing began to vanish, piece by piece, until I was left exposed and vulnerable. I realized I was unprotected, the city nothing more than an illusion. I had thought I was in heaven, but it was merely a trap. My steps, drawn by unseen forces, led me deeper into darkness until barely any light remained. I found myself in a cold, dark, oppressive space. I eventually reached a cliff's edge. The ground trembled beneath me as if ready to consume me, and then I was pulled downward. This was not the haven of peace I imagined. This was a hellish abyss. When my descent halted, it felt as though I had slammed into the ground, but this ground was unlike any earth we know. Flames surrounded me, casting a reddish glow that saturated every corner, and the air itself seared my lungs like breathing in embers. Around me, the agonized screams of countless souls filled the air, men, women, and children from every nation and faith, all enduring unspeakable torment. Some burned continuously in flames, while others bore immense stones endlessly. Some were dismembered by creatures with claws, others cast repeatedly into bottomless pits that resounded with echoes of void. As I surveyed the grim landscape, I recognized familiar faces among the tormented. The first was Dan, a comrade from my military days, now burdened with a colossal weight on his back. His knees nearly gave out under the strain, yet he clung to his load unyieldingly. It was heartbreaking to see him like this. In desperation, I called out, "Dan!" But my voice seemed to dissolve into the abyss. He couldn't hear me. Dan paused, turned, and his eyes met mine. They were vacant, reflecting immense suffering, yet there was no flicker of recognition. Then, my gaze fell on a group encircled by flames. Among them was an Israeli politician I once admired for his eloquent speeches on TV. Now his face was scorched beyond recognition, twisted in a scream of pain. As people hurled stones at him, our eyes briefly met. In that instant it dawned on me that everyone here, regardless of their past stature, was enduring the repercussions of their earthly deeds. Looking around, I saw more faces I knew, enemies I had once hated and friends I had cherished, all standing together. Here, old animosities had vanished. Everyone suffered equally, stripped of their past identities and grievances. In one corner, another scene caught my eye. A soldier in an Israeli Defense Forces uniform stood not as an adversary, but alongside soldiers from the opposition. Here they were not foes but fellow sufferers, bound by the same relentless punishment. As I walked closer to one of the figures, it was clear who he was without even seeing his face. It was Isle, a colleague from past missions. He was bound tightly to a pole, chains wrapped around his chest, cutting into his skin as though they were part of him. Isle's face showed a mix of fear, regret, and utter helplessness. I felt an urge to shout his name, but the words froze in my throat. The sight of him, of this place, inflicted wounds deep within my soul. It felt as if I were absorbing their agony. What was the purpose of being here? Why were they enduring such extreme suffering? And what punishment awaited me? I realized that I didn't want the answers, yet there was no escape. The agony was unending. This was merely the start. The dreadful tableau was inescapable. Screams echoed from every direction as each person confronted the consequences of their deeds. But the true horror wasn't just the physical torment, it was the shattering of souls, crushed by the weight of their own misdeeds. Now, it was my turn. Suddenly, the world around me became eerily quiet. Though the flames still blazed, their roar was muted, absorbed by an enveloping silence. From the mist, shapes began to materialize. The first was a young boy, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, with large, sorrowful eyes and an innocent expression. I recognized him instantly. He was the child I had seen during a mission in Gaza, clutching his mother as we cleared the area. I knew then he was not a threat, yet I had followed orders and pulled the trigger. Now he stood before me, his gaze piercing. "Why did you kill me?" he asked, his voice resonating all around. Tears streamed down my cheeks. I was unable to respond. Seeking forgiveness seemed futile. His very presence condemned me. Then others appeared, each a ghost of my past mistakes. I remembered the day I mistakenly shot an innocent farmer. Here, the term accident lost all meaning as he stood judgingly before me. Every wrong decision, every error made from blind obedience, they all faced me one by one. Not only did I see those I had harmed, but also my own fears and failings. The fleeting guilt I had ignored during missions now manifested palpably before me. As they approached, any sliver of hope within me disintegrated. Amidst this, confessions began to echo around me. My own confessions, voiced as if from another, yet undeniably mine. I killed them. I followed orders. I killed innocents because I feared to question. I disregarded human lives because obedience was simpler. Each confession sliced through my soul, sharp and cold. I realized escape was impossible. In this hellish depth, hope was a stranger. The darkness seemed to devour me, my very essence diminishing under the enormity of my errors. As I disintegrated under their weight, my own voice faded, leaving only the haunting realization that I might be trapped in this torment forever. Just as I resigned myself to eternal despair, the oppressive gloom of hell unexpectedly calmed. The wails ceased, the flames diminished, and it seemed as though all of creation paused, suspending its breath. In that stillness, a light appeared. Initially, it was just a faint flicker, but it grew steadily into a brilliant beacon, slicing through the pervasive darkness and blinding me with its purity and tranquility. Instinctively, I raised my hands to shield my eyes. From within that radiant light, a figure emerged, tall, composed, radiating both gentleness and immense strength. It approached slowly, and as it drew near, the face became clear. It was Jesus. There was no mistaking him. I knew it deep within. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely a fragmented echo. He looked at me, his eyes piercing yet devoid of judgment, and held my gaze. "You forgot peace." Jesus spoke gently, his voice resonating deeply within me. His simple words struck a chord. "I was just doing my duty," I managed to reply, though the words faltered, caught in my throat. "I was only following orders." "When you disregarded human life, you forgot the meaning of peace," he continued. "But being here is not about punishment. It's about understanding." In that instant, something inside me shattered. The walls of pride, the chains of fear, the shadows of selfishness. All that had shielded me from truth lay in ruins. I had convinced myself I was doing what was necessary, but standing before him, the self-deceptions crumbled. "What must I do?" I asked, my voice choked by tears. "Forgive. Forgive yourself and others. Choose peace," he replied, his voice enveloping me in a warmth that contrasted starkly with the cold truths I had faced. His words kindled a new fire within me, amidst the ashes of a soul once engulfed by flames. This newfound fire seemed eternal. Deep reflections followed. The innocence I had destroyed, the commands I had followed, my unwavering dedication to warfare, none had ever led to peace. For the first time, my soul began to shift. Led by Jesus, I started to rediscover the kindness buried deep within me. I was truly searching for meaning for the first time, and I found that meaning not in conflict, but in peace. Then, abruptly, reality returned. It felt as though a brisk wind had slapped my face. My eyelids gradually lifted, and the harsh daylight irritated them. I realized I lay on a stretcher across the battlefield. Explosions still rumbled in the background, their sound soft and distant. A sharp pain seared through my shoulder where a bullet had hit, yet this physical ache paled in comparison to the turmoil within my soul. As I lay there gazing into the heavens, I pondered over the vivid nightmare I had endured. The inferno, the agony, the admissions, and Jesus. It all seemed too vivid to merely be a dream. The terror I had felt, the suffering I had seen, and the words I had listened to still echoed deep inside me. Jesus' message resonated in every recess of my mind. Choose peace. As I was borne across the battlefield on the stretcher, my mind raced through the chapters of my life, my beliefs, and my actions. How many lives had I overlooked in the name of duty? How many innocents had I slain? Were these actions truly reflective of my values, or had I merely succumbed to blind obedience? Suddenly, one of the soldiers carrying me leaned in close. "You'll be fine, lad. Hold on," he murmured, yet his voice seemed distant, like an echo from another world. At that moment, I felt detached, not just from the battlefield but from the very beliefs that had defined me. The duties I had once embraced with pride now weighed heavily on me as burdens. Something within me was coming undone. The certainties I had clung to no longer held their clarity. Lying there amid the chaos, a resolution crystallized within me. I needed to transform my life. I had to embrace peace. This ordeal had granted me a second chance, one I was determined not to squander. As I recuperated in the hospital, the visions persisted, the bleak corridors of hell, the suffering, the haunted faces, and that pervasive light. Jesus' admonition, "Choose peace," continued to resonate within me. For days, I lay in my hospital bed in silence, immersed in reflection. Until this juncture, my life had been governed by an unwavering obedience to duty, a principle that had provided purpose. Now, that foundation was shattered. While I was uncertain where to seek true meaning, I was certain of my desire to pursue it. For the first time, I found myself questioning, whom do I serve? Am I truly doing what's right? I lacked answers, but the very act of posing these questions marked the beginning of my transformation. One morning, as I gazed out the hospital window, a deep urge for forgiveness emerged within me. I was burdened by the weight of my past misdeeds, yet I was determined not to carry this burden any longer. The path to self-forgiveness required a complete life transformation, a dedication of my soul to God. Years of warfare had infused me with anger and fear. Now I yearned to understand the essence of peace. Upon my discharge from the hospital, I consciously avoided my former comrades. I realized I could no longer inhabit their world. I chose a path distant from arms and conflict. A spiritual quest had commenced. This second opportunity granted by God was too precious to squander. I aspired to redefine myself as a proponent of peace and an emissary of love. However, this transformation wouldn't come easily. My past clung to me. To make amends for the wrongs I had done, I knew I needed a profound personal change. After my discharge from the hospital, my entire life shifted. The military uniform I had once donned with pride each morning now seemed like a heavy shackle. I could no longer deceive myself. I couldn't continue down this path. Announcing my decision to leave the military wasn't easy. It shocked my friends and commanders. While some commended my bravery, others branded me a traitor. Yet their judgments held no sway over me. I was compelled to follow the illumination, the directive Jesus had imparted to me. Confronting my past errors and acknowledging them was a challenging ordeal. Nightly, I found myself wrestling with guilt and seeking divine forgiveness through prayer. The memories of the innocents I had harmed, the agony I had inflicted, and the commands I had blindly obeyed haunted me. Yet I knew I could not endure the burden of these memories. Transformation was imperative for my peace of mind. I embarked on a new path, forsaking the advocate of war I once was to become a champion of peace. I initiated a spiritual quest to engage with others, imparting lessons on love, forgiveness, and peace. Embarking on this new journey was fraught with difficulties. My past was well known. Some questioned my integrity, asking, "Does a killer have the right to talk about peace?" Their skepticism was not unfounded. However, it was precisely my turbulent history that steered me towards this new course. Every day presented an opportunity to redefine who I was through the choices I made. I have come to believe that love and understanding have the power to reconstruct the ruins left by war. Where I once dwelled in hatred and fear, I now endeavor to illuminate the shadows. This path is not a conclusion, but a commencement. With each step towards advocating peace, I distance myself from my former transgressions. This time, I am certain of my direction. I have embraced love and forgiveness.